I think we'll do public comments.
Okay, first up is George Taylor.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want you to know, with all due respect to these people over here, I agree with what they say, but to do what they're suggesting to do is racial profiling. Now, I'm not going to look at you because I got to read this letter in 3 minutes. My name is George W. Taylor. I've been a resident of Wildomar since November of 1986. I am extremely disturbed by that my voting rights are being violated by individuals that have filed this frivolous lawsuit. That according to your resolution has been filed with no specific citation of law violation. While I understand the council's decision not to fight the issue, it is certainly not in the best interest of our residents, especially since the city is too small to be voting by districts. I cite the following. We are only 24 square miles within our borders. We only have 34,000 residents within our borders. We have 5 well-qualified, experienced council members, some of which may live in the same district as another as a result of not being able to continue to provide what we need in the way of leadership. We may not be able to guarantee that we can get a person with the same governmental experience, if any experience at all, to represent each of the 5 districts. I would challenge the individuals who filed this lawsuit to provide the specific sections that violate my rights as a voter within this city. As an alternative, I suggest that you table this item to confer with your city attorney to find if you can vote as you indicate in your resolution, where you are directing the city manager to develop 1 or more electoral districts to see if you can vote to establish 1 electoral district with 5 positions on the city council. I believe in this manner you're complying with the position of the lawsuit, not violating my rights as a citizen of Wildomar, so that all of us can vote by district. I'm serious to know if this is an alternative, and I'm serious, I really mean it. So I hope the devil you do give some consideration to this, because it's racial profiling to divide Latinos into one district, blacks in another, whatever the case may be. There's nothing to say that a fellow that is a Latino or a black person cannot be represented, put himself forward as a representative of this community by voting at large. There's no reason at all. If they don't want to do it, that's their problem, not mine. But I strongly suggest you take that into consideration and ask him to vote for 1 electoral district with 5 positions. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Gina Castanon. And are you getting donated minutes from Ruben, or is he speaking on his own?
No, I'm donating minutes. I don't think I'll need them though.
Okay.
I'll be quick. A few questions. I did have a brief conversation with Bridget just prior to the meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and ask these questions for the sake of the public at large that's attending. Now, we were told that this was in part a new law as of January from Sacramento. I mean, how come staff didn't know prior to this that a law was coming down, a new law that could affect the city in this way? And then Bridget, I know we had this conversation, but I'm going to say it. I mean, wasn't there some way that we could get Bridget as the real Latina in the group as you know, qualifying for us to not to do districts? I mean, like George says, we're way too small. Here's my other questions as well. Okay, say we divide it into districts. What if no one runs in the districts? You know? So we could really have a council of only 3 people? You know? That seems to be a problem. And what if Hispanics aren't elected? And it was odd that you had said that even if we could prove, I mean, that you would have to actually prove, Bridget, that you were Latina. I'd like a little clarification on that. So if we have to prove, what, percentage DNA testing? If that's true, is every council person that's gonna, get elected have to prove their ethnicity? Because you always can't judge a book by its cover. Because Bridget should have been covered, but then if you got a white girl looking like me, well, you know what? I'm a Latina too. And it's not just because I'm married to a Mexican. Because we did Ancestry.com and I am more Spanish than he is. So what is gonna happen if no Hispanic? I mean, this is the reason for the districting, for fairness. I mean, if we can't do anything about this, I'd like to know from council that you are committed, like we did at the WIN committee, and also you staff, our council directed, with the vehicle licensing fees to lobby Sacramento. I know Bridget said something, but for the sake of the community, I want to put it out there. I mean, are you committed? Because Wildomar should not be districts. We always knew that from the beginning, and oddly enough, the WIN committee had 12-member WIN committee. I know some people don't like the history of Wildomar, but let's go back a bit. There was 3 of us out of 12 Hispanics on the WIN committee, so that would have covered, the lawsuit basis. So the irony of it all is just very aggravating, to say the least, if you knew the history. So if you could answer those questions that you are committed to change it back, because we should not, I think the community would like to know what council thinks, their positions, if we should stay a district or not. And I liked it so much how you said you wanted the public's input, as to how the districts are going to be laid out. But there's always an association of cost. Wildomar has a slim budget, for extras. So how are we going to do this? If it was either by litigation, so you're making your choices either by how much would it cost to litigate, and that seems to be a no-win situation. How much is it going to cost you to lobby it, and how long would it take? So obviously, we can't get it to this election coming up, but, do you make a commitment, to turn this back? So I agree with there's lots of nonsense litigation. And let me say for the record, none of it's come from me.
Thank you, Gina.
So, yeah, you're welcome. In fact, in the coming meetings and months, I'm just gonna tell you all how much I've saved you. But this is very important to us, and we want to see it through. But with the time constraints, it doesn't, it seems like a very quick process, and I don't know how fair it's going to be given the time restraints. If you could explain that as well, thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Ken Mays.
Too small, the city of Bradbury, California has 1,084 residents and has voted by district since 1957. These contracts, by all appearances, look to violate the Wildomar Municipal Code, with the breakdown of a larger contract being divided among multiple contractors. It looks to be intended to avoid competitive bidding. The last time the city went through this process, bullying the citizens into an at-large elections, one company was hired for a dual purpose out of 9 companies asked. Time may be of the essence, but the city staff and council sat on the original letter for 23 days before discussing it at a closed session. A letter that the public still has not seen and should have been included in tonight's packet. Then another 14 days elapsed before tonight's special meeting for a total of 5 weeks. Wouldn't want to interrupt the holidays, I guess. With August 12th being a drop-dead date, 7.5 months was more than enough time to do it without haste. How are these public input meetings going to be announced? the last go-around, 13 residents showed up for 4 public meetings. It looks like they're all going to be lumped in with city council meetings. The current email blast system directly reaches approximately 2.5% of the population. Will notices and materials be made available in Spanish, as 30% of the voting population is Latino? It's the gist of the current process happening. And what happens when SCOTUS renders a ruling in the Evanwell v. Abbott before its term ends in June, setting the definition of one person, one vote principle of the 14th Amendment? If it differs from what we have now, do we have to start all over again? Thank you.
Next speaker.
Next speaker is Maria Walker.
I'm going to ask for apology first because I get really nervous when I speak. I'm a Latina and I voted for at large. We're a small community and I know you have to do this, but I just want to be out there saying that as a Latina, we're not stupid. We don't have to have special privileges so that we can have our districts, we can vote even in our districts that we, or in our at large, for other people. We don't have to have specific groups of places where they have to specially give us a little prompt. Here, vote this way, or you have to have a special person to represent you. I don't believe that, and I just feel like every time they do that, it's more divisive than it helps. When you're given special privileges because you're a certain group, organ, or person, you feel like you're gonna get, I don't know, like you're gonna be disliked because of it, and it's wrong. We're all human race, and we all have brains, and we think, and I just think it's wrong that we have to just, we have to put all these people together, and they can vote. I vote for myself all the time. I voted every election, even the ones that people don't show up that much for. I have my own brain, I think. I don't need any special ordinance or special place for me to vote or whatever. I don't need a safe space. I'm okay with voting like everyone else. And I voted for at large. I don't like that my vote is being taken advantage of. Not because I'm a Latina, because I'm a voter. And I think everybody has the right to vote the way they want to, no matter where they live in the community. I hope I came out clearer. That's it. Thank you, Maria.
Last speaker is George Cambero.
Okay. Hello,
Hi.
George Cambero, and I just, for the record, I'm here on behalf of myself, not the what to say. And I have to concur with George Taylor's letter. I don't have nothing written in the comments with me. I agree with Gina's comments. I agree with Maria's Walker's comments. Just because I've been trying to run for office for years. I run for the school district. I run for the Western Municipal Water District. I run for Elsinore Valley Municipal Water District. And when I run not because to represent the Latino community. No. I wanted to run because it's something that I believed in. I believe that I represent everybody at large, and we're so small. That I agree. It will be very difficult. I don't like the cracking, allocation. Just because if you know the people, the Latinos, Hispanics, or whatever you want to call them, they're all over Wildomar. There are quite a few that live at the farm, quite a few that live in Setco. A lot of them, they live right in that Wildomar school around it. But they're not in all in one place. And I'm doing the census right now, and a lot of those things I disagree to say, hey, do you have a cell phone? Do you speak English? Do you speak English well? All of those things I kind of ignore. So a lot of us don't answer those questions, so you may not really get the real things just because of the way people live. A lot of the Hispanics don't like to be noted. You know, we just like to be around. We like to be part of the community. And you know, all of my family, they all been in Wildomar for 30 years, and you know, we like the way it is. Anyway, it's just those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
And I'm very proud of you guys being who you are.
Thank you. Next speaker.
We have one more, Joseph Morabito.
Well, I was listening to some of those comments, and I really appreciated the ones from Gina Castanon. She made good points. What if somebody doesn't run from that district? So that, I'm sure you're going to have to at least have some bylaws written out that if that doesn't happen, or if such thing does occur. Just had a couple of notes. On a humorous note, Wildomar will henceforth be spared the political Sinageddon at election time. And, but I do feel for Ben's district if he uses his 2014 sign in 2018.
I've got all those signs all for one district.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that the city council members live far enough apart that none need to fear being put into another district. But I hope as much care is given to obvious boundaries in places like Winsong Valley, the area around the high school, the farm, Sedco, any other area that's an obvious landmark. Hopefully a line won't have to go down the middle of them to preserve any of the current addresses. Because 10 years from now, most likely none of you will be up on the dais. So we should have your guys' addresses at least on the list. The last thing I have is, we know that the letter writer to the LA lawyer will be looking for any ticky-tack reason to bring another lawsuit against the city. So you're going to really have to cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And even then, I'm putting my money. I'm going to go, you know, mortgage my house and put my money on the line for the lawsuit coming. Anyway.
And that's all the speakers I have.
So I think if it's okay with council, I think let's address the comments first before we get into all ours. I'm trying to remember everyone's questions. So we'll start with George. I'm not sure, Marguerite, can you answer George's suggestion? Yeah,
Yeah, I hope I was keeping track of
Okay.
it too. Yeah,
Okay.
some of these will,
Thank you. I knew I was supposed to push that button. Some of these overlap with questions by other members of the public. Size, we're too small. Unfortunately, size is not a consideration under either the California Voting Rights Act or under the Federal Act. I think as this erudite gentleman here pointed out, what does Bradbury have, 150 people? And one of the key federal cases is a little town in Texas that I think had 1,000 people. So it's not going to be a defense. I think it is a policy consideration that needs to be brought to the legislature and discussed. Does this make sense for small cities? And I think there are good arguments that it doesn't. But at this point, size is not a consideration. The second real key question is one that shows you have some knowledge of various electoral systems. And one of them is a system where there is a single district, and within the district you vote in seats, like there's seat 1, seat 2, seat 3. Those are not geographical representations within the single district, they're just arbitrary numbers. It's called a numbered post system. Well, Mr. Johnson can correct me, but the city of Modesto, which was the very first case under the California Voting Rights Act, had exactly that type of system. And the way the systems are defined in law, that system is considered at-large voting. It has to do with the way the law is worded. So that system will not protect Wildomar. And in fact, there are some federal cases that suggest that a numbered post system can be more discriminatory than a pure at-large. The easiest way to get elected is to run at-large and have 12 people run for 3 seats. You can get elected with a very small number of votes, a very small percentage. It's plurality win, top 2, top 3. When you start numbering the posts, you foster head-to-head contests, and it's harder to get elected. So that's kind of a sideline. The point of the matter is that kind of system is included as at-large voting under the California Voting Rights Act, which requires geographically based district voting in order to protect the city.
Okay, so that was George. That was your question. We'll move to Gina. She had several. One of your questions, Gina, was about our legislative, and I have contacted Assemblywoman Melissa's office a week ago. Today I was contacted by her staff. I know Ben also has contacted Melissa's office, and we spoke to Supervisor Kevin Jeffries at an event we were at last week. So yes, that is something that we are actively pursuing. Your other questions, new law, what we were referring to is Senate Bill 493. That is a new law that we can go to districts if we wanted by ordinance, but that we wouldn't have used that new law when you were saying how could staff know. It wasn't something we thought we were going to have to use because we didn't think the lawsuit was coming. And what your other question was, what if no one runs? That's a question I've heard a lot. So what happens if no one runs in that district?
Okay, that's a good one. Well, there are laws right now in California that take care of that. And there are 2 things that happen. Number one, the person who's in office holds over until the successor qualifies. So it may be that a number of the at-large elected will hold over for the first round. And the second is the council has the ability to appoint. And the council would appoint in the district. So there are safeguards so the city wouldn't end up with only 3 council members.
Okay. That's a good thing. Oh, and the Latina, and I did ask this, because I said, okay, here I am. My grandparents came, they immigrated from Mexico, so why can't I be the person? And please explain it.
You know, it's funny you should bring that up, and I'm not going to use any names. But Mr. Doug Johnson, to my right here, has recently had a conversation with one unnamed attorney about this very issue. Oh, you're going to sue that city, didn't you know so-and-so, I'm going to make up the name, Jones, is Latina. And he said, oh, that doesn't count. The name is Jones. Well, I think he's wrong about that, but let me be you do count. Let me be very serious, though, about what this law focuses on. It focuses on the voter and not the person elected. Okay? So it may well be that, and we don't know this, Mayor, because we haven't done the expensive studies that's necessary to find this out. It may be that Latinos preferred a candidate who ran against you. And so the law looks to the race of the voter and not to the race of the candidate. Now, you typically analyze elections where they have a choice of a Latino or a Latina because that might tend to polarize the vote, but not always. So it's incorrect to say that the fact of having Latinos elected protects you. On the other hand, it's a very good fact. It's a very good fact. And it should come up in the defense of the city because when you're looking at the voters, it demonstrates that people who are, let's say that the mayor was not the chosen candidate of Latinos, but it tends to demonstrate that non-Latinos will vote for a Latino. And so you say, well, is that really a situation where race divides the city? No, it sounds a bit like it's the quality or the policies, not the quality, but the policies of the candidate. By getting right back down to it, no, we don't have to do a litmus test, a genetic test on all of our candidates. Some of the data that Mr. Johnson gave you will enable an expert, if we ever need to hire one, I'm hoping we don't, that will be able to look at the groups of voters, perform regression analysis, and be able to estimate who are the preferred candidates of Latinos versus whites. My suspicion is you're not going to get very good results out of Wildomar. You're very small, and that makes it hard to get results. But it's expensive. It's really, really expensive. And then we get this done and we say, hey, we're going to hold tight because this is what our expert shows. The plaintiffs are going to have their set of experts too. And you go to court and we go on for 2.5 years and it's going to be tremendously expensive. So congratulations for the willingness of this city to put quality people in the council, no matter who they are.
Thank you. Okay, Ken Mays had questioned the letters. We did receive the letter, I think it was December 21st. We had to respond within 3 weeks. We did receive a call immediately from the city attorney, and we had to respond. So yes, we were working over Christmas break. I think that was all his questions. And then Marie and George were just comments. Okay. Who wants to start?
Well, I want to address what Gina brought up as far as lobbying our state on this issue. I completely agree that this is a horrible situation for such a small city to be in, and that our citizens, you know, who cares what we think, our voters all agreed that at-large is the way to go, and that's what we want, and, you know, by golly, that's where we've been the last 5 years, and it's worked, and I don't think we should have to change. But to make a $500 or $500,000 bet that we can hire enough, you know, people and get the right maps and do all the other investigative work to find that out and to go in front of a judge and win, even if we win at $500,000, is way too high. Let alone then if we ever get, even when the case gets dismissed, he'll still show up with a bill from his side. And so for us to ponder, you know, could we make a good argument? Is Bridget Latino? You know, all these great questions that we've all thought through. We've all had these, you know, questions of, does that answer the question? Sure, I think we can make a good fight. I think we have some good arguments, and I think maybe we could even win. But to have the 500 grand to pull out of our reserves and go do that, just, it doesn't make fiscal sense for our citizens, for our city, when we have so many other issues and so many tight budgets already because of where our state's put us, to go down that path. As much as I'd love to. You know, and I know other cities around us will take that fight to them, and other cities have. And so far, every city that's taken that fight has lost. And not lost $500,000, but millions of dollars. Not only that, but then to not have any input on their districts. So when the judges seem to get to the point where that city has violated the Voter Rights Act, the citizens and the city council has zero input on what the district should look like. Zero input on whether or not that their address is included when they look at drawing the district. Zero input on whether or not maybe they're already elected for just 2 years, which like where Tim and Marcia are at. They all get wiped off and they all have to rerun. So, you know, those are the options when you lose, and so far that's what every city's had to go through when they lose. And I've got colleagues on other boards that I work with that have just recently lost, and they all are saying just bend over, right? Lack of a better term. But there is just nothing to say that we can go out and fight and win this. And even if we win, we still lose. So, well, I keep fighting for our citizens, sure, but what I can tell you about Sacramento is they seem really proud of the fact that they've given us this option, that they've changed this law, so as a city we can just go ahead and change. And Sacramento thinks they've fixed the problem. Sacramento thinks that, well, look, you don't have to go down the path of Palmdale and have to give it to your voters and have the voters say, no, you want to stay at large and then lose. You can just change. And my argument to Sacramento is, well, why don't the voters have a right? Why don't the voters have a right to choose, and why don't the voters, if they do so, choose to stay at large, get to stay at large? Why does that judge then take that right away? But that's the California Voter Rights Act that we could all poke holes at it tonight, but again, do we have the money to fight it? So, yeah, my commitment would be that if we ever have the law changed, and let's say the state comes down and says, you know what, this doesn't make sense for cities under 100,000 people, I'm fully in support that we would go back to at large at that point. I don't know that our state legislature will ever get there. I think our state legislature, they've shown over and over on this particular area of law that they think we should all be districts. When you look at our state legislature and think, how could you think that? Well, the majority of our state legislature comes from 2 or 3 rather large cities that are all by district. And they think that works rather well for them, and that's why everyone should be that way. I'd argue that we shouldn't be. You know, and I think we've all had this visceral reaction of, no, we don't want to go this way, we should stay the way our citizens told us to, and we'd all love to, but...
We agree with you.
Yeah, you know, and I look at all the people that said, no, we should just stay the way we are and not go to districts. I agree. But so, those are my comments on how we got to this and why we have to go down this path. Is it rushed? Sure. We don't want to, you know, but we have to get it done by November, and we have to have it in place before we even get to where people are pulling papers for the race, for those 2 district seats that'll be up. So do we have to get a lot done between now and then? Sure. Would our staff rather have done other stuff this last few weeks? Yeah, we've got some other major laws coming down the pike. Medical marijuana is going to come roaring back in because we have to look at state law that basically says by the 16th of May, if you don't have certain laws and protection in place, that you might have to just take whatever the state says on medical marijuana. So we've got other issues we're dealing with, and you know, I know Tom, God bless you Tom, spent a lot of time over Christmas break putting all this information together for us. You know, some people ask, why didn't we do a special meeting on the 24th when we got the letter? Because our own staff had to get up to speed on what was going on and what was changing and what laws were coming down the pike that were going to change between then and the 1st. You know, literally as Tom's trying to put this together, the laws are changing on them. And so, you know, to ask our city staff to have had a special meeting within, you know, before those 3 weeks, I think is rather difficult. And Tom contacted me and obviously contacted Bridget because she was coming on as mayor. And, you know, we individually had those conversations, and Tom did a lot of great work to get us to the point where we could even have a substantive discussion about this on the first meeting of the year. So I applaud Tom and our staff for putting this together as fast as you can, finding our experts to come in, and I thank you as well, because I know you guys both had a lot of conversations over the holidays, and it even ran Tom so ragged he got sick last week, and he's been home sick for most of last week. So anyhow, those are some of my comments I want to hear from my colleagues.
I totally agree with Ben. I don't think there's any of us that want districts. We heard what the voters said at large, and we all want at large. Why are we rushing? Because if we don't, he'll file more and more papers, and we're going to be paying. We're going to be settling. We're going to be paying money. So we have a time frame that we have to get these things done by. Anybody up here happy about doing it? No, we're not. But it is what it is. Bob?
I'm going to say more than just ditto, but we were forced to go to districts when we incorporated by LAFCO. They forced us to go to districts, so at the first opportunity we had, we went to at-large and submitted it to the voters. And the voters felt that this was the right choice.
Bob, I believe it was both questions were on the ballot. The at-large or district was on the ballot, and the voters did choose at that first election.
Yes, but they made me put the at-large option.
Well, yeah, they have to make you put the option, but the voters did pick it that
Yeah,
first.
they didn't have to make me do that because we didn't submit it that way.
You mean district?
I mean the district one, yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I believe state law required at that time.
So anyway, coming back to it, I'm totally against the idea that the voters don't have any rights and that the legislature knows better than we do how we should do our political system. So, will I probably proceed on this? Yes, I will, and it is a question of risk mitigation. So, how much risk will I have if I proceed? It looks like things are stacked against us. So, with a little more money in the city, I'm sure I'd be out there saying, let's fight this to the end. But we actually don't have any surplus money in the city. So, I I do have some general questions of the presenters. Should I do those now?
Yeah.
Okay. The public hearings that we are going to hold, what's the structure of those hearings look like? Who will preside over them? And what will the format of the discussion be?
If I could share that answer with Mr. Johnson, let me give you what the law says about public hearings. It says nothing about them, other than you have to have, other than, which is nice. Actually, it's nice, except that you have to have 3 of them. And you have to give notice to the public that there will be this public hearing. And actually, the full council doesn't even need to be present. And so the council structures it the way it would like. And the council often comes and can often sit in the audience to hear firsthand what is going on. The council may wish to preside, or Mr. Johnson, I think you've actually conducted the your demographer can conduct the public hearings for you. And, you don't have to be on the dais. So that way, if you're thinking that you think it would be helpful for the public to have more of them, it doesn't necessarily have to coincide with a formal council meeting. You don't have to call a special meeting. You can just have the public hearing. So that is a structuring issue that, if we understood your wishes and make them known to the city attorney, we can certainly assist you in structuring. The public hearing is for the public, and often they are situations where only the public talks. And they will be interactive, perhaps with the consultant, but not necessarily with you. So.
Thank you.
Doug, do you want to add anything about that?
I think the only thing I'd add is that this is an obscure issue. Your community is actually much more informed than most because it hasn't been that long since we went through this. Similar question. But we do, at every hearing, there will be a presentation at the beginning to say, well, why are we here? What is this issue? What are the rules for evaluating the different maps? And then looking at the maps. So we will definitely kick that off so the public just doesn't walk in and fill out cards and who knows what they say. The other piece that I always add is, this one's a fast process, so we don't have a lot of time to let the public draw anything, but if someone has a fancy computer and wants to draw a fancy map, great, we'll take it and include it in the packet for the council's decision. If the public wants to sit on a napkin, at Subway over here and scribble a map, great, Justin and I will take that, put it in the computer and make it look like a professional map and go for it, make that clean. So the public is welcome to comment on the drafts we make, ask for changes to drafts we make, or to draw their own map. That's all part of it.
We actually did that the first time.
Yes.
We accepted maps. Okay, so Bob, is that it?
Yeah, well, I guess a comment on that is that I like the idea of sitting out and listening to people myself. I don't know how the rest of the council feels on that, but I don't think I need to guide them into how to do it. We've got people here that are going to tell us the rules. The other question I have is, if I'm understanding this correctly, it really doesn't matter whether we even elected Latinos from a concentrated Latino population that we don't have, but if we had one, the lawsuit could still be sent against us because we didn't do some other thing. There was a second Latino district, there was a second Latino that should have been a district, so you should have had 2 instead of 1 and all that. The lawsuits can proceed anyway, is that correct?
Yes. It is not correct under the California Act, but it is correct under the federal act. So that map that I showed you where we were dividing up and concentrating Latino areas, it was clear that you could have done 2 districts with Latino population majorities, instead of pulling them together into a single district. That would be a federal action filed in federal court. But the reason we're making these presentations to you, and the reason the city attorney has recommended that you retain professional help, is to guide you through the process on issues and not corral you at all, but at least put a bumper where the law gets involved, so that when you're done with your plan, it's fully defensible and nobody will sue you over it.
I really have a trouble with a situation where we're doing something that's legal and we're doing something which is right, and somehow it's going to cost us a lot of money to hold to it. I'm sure we all have that problem up here. That's all the questions I have.
My turn. Since I live with a Latina and I'm outnumbered in my house with all these Latino children that I have, I'm completely outnumbered, so I'm already offended. I'm with George. I think it's disenfranchising to the rest of the citizens of any ethnicity, because now it's all of a sudden the Latino and everybody else. And I take really bad offense against that. And one thing that we did in our household on the 2010 election, or in the census, is we didn't tell them anything. We did what Cambero did. It's none of your freaking business who lives in this house. We have this many people, and that's all you need to know. You don't need to know where we're from or how we vote on anything. It's none of your business. Just count us, and we're all Americans. And it irks me to sit up here and have to be put up with this nonsense of districts. And I don't understand how a judge can overturn. Well, we are in California, so we know that judges already overturn everything that we do in California. They make up their own minds. But since it was voted, that was my question. Why is it that we voted this through as a city after we were districts and became at large under the vote of the people, and then a judge could turn around and tell us that we have to do something district, especially when the mandate is 100,000 or more as districts in California, and now somebody's going to claim that we're messed up because we don't have enough representation. Well, let me tell you, as I said, there's too many in my house, so there's lots of representation in my district, and my little compound of military compound that I live in, with the razor wire. But anyway, I'm with everybody else. But when I heard that even if I win, I have to pay the other guy's side and all of his expenses, what do? It comes down to a purely financial problem for me. I'm willing to go all the way and tell him to pound sand, because I know, just like Mr. Morabito said, if we do this and go to districts, we will get sued by somebody else. It's just the way the game is played, because we know the lawsuits in this city. We know that we'll never be protected in this city against those lawsuits. So it just goes on and on and on, and we just spend money for no reason. When these people fade out of the system, it won't be a problem with those kind of lawsuits. I'm sure somebody else new will show up and start it all over again. But my personal vote is, no, we don't want to do this. That's my personal vote. We met in our closed session. We all discussed this. We know where we're coming from. We know how much money it's going to cost us to defend. And you're talking, it could be up to $1 million. Am I willing to spend every dime I have to do it? Yeah, but it's not my dime. It's all of our dime. And that's where it comes down to. It's very difficult. And I want to make sure that everybody knows in this community, and this whole entire community, that there's no way that any of us want to go this route. Because the voter said at large, and I believe that the voter has a right. Now, I don't understand how a judge could tell us, after the voters made the decision, that we'd have to change. So I'm curious, my thinking is, why is it that we have to go down this path? Why can't we take it directly to a judge right up front and say, hey, the voter said this, what is your thinking? Can we get a preliminary hearing to just have a judge tell us that, before we go through the whole nonsense of filing and doing all these districts and stuff, since the voters decided, where's our rights as voters? Because I feel disenfranchised as an American citizen, and I'm sick of the crap that the state of California has pulled on us. And it's not fair, and it's divisive to all our communities. I have a friend I'll tell you, I won't mention his name. There's a gentleman that's on the city council in Los Angeles, and he is the district. He's in a district, and they consider them the mayor of that little section. This man tells me, right to my face, that he is totally different in franchise because he can't get anything done in his district because he lives in the poorer community. Now that is disenfranchised, and I don't care what anybody says, that's a voter rights violation. And he was very upset. It's an African American, and it was an African American area in that city, and he was very mad. And I agreed with him. I said there should be no districts, even in large cities. You need to represent everybody, because I guess what? If everybody knows you're representing them all equally, you're going to have a lot better time being even elected. But and I had also the questions about if somebody didn't run in that district. Yeah, now I understand. Yeah, but then it comes back to who do we appoint? I mean, come on. It's a nonsense. This is total nonsense. I just can't stand it. But my question is, can we go before a judge and ask the judge to make a ruling before we go through this whole process? What do you think, Judge? Here we are. I mean, I don't know how we would even do it, but can we go there and ask him, we're at large, the people voted at large, and we want to stay at large because we're a small community. Is that even a possibility?
If I can jump in and address that, and then I'll also have Ms. Leone address it a little bit because she is much more versed in the litigation aspect of this. But my initial reaction is no. I mean, a judge is going to want us to go through the whole process and to present the evidence to the judge as to whether we have violated the Voting Rights Act or not. And to get that evidence, as Ms. Leone mentioned, we're going to have to hire experts, and they're going to have to prepare a bunch of reports, and that will be very expensive. And the judge isn't going to look at it until we've gone through that process to get all the evidence together and presented it to the judge.
You mean the evidence of a voted through thing by the people is not evidence in itself? And how can it be a violation of Voter Rights Act when it's at large amongst everybody in our city? That's what I'm not understanding, because everybody in our city votes for however many people run. They all make the vote, and it just happens to be the 5 or 3 and then 2, whatever. That's confusing to me. Why would you have to prepare everything when you can tell the judge we're at large by consensus of all of our voters? I don't understand any. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me, and the law here doesn't make any sense to me, and it's just frustrating. Yeah, you can go ahead and give me the answer because I'm already upset. So.
You riled him up, Tom.
No, I had to go home with the Latina.
I'm going to be a little bit academic here. Our courts in the Constitution are not permitted to issue advisory opinions. So what you're saying is, let's go to the court and say, look, we had districts, Mr. Cashman and Councilmember Cashman and Councilmember Benoit agree that there was a choice there. The voters changed their minds, and now we're going to just go ask the judge, because the voters approved this different way. How can you possibly get involved and overturn that? Aren't we protected because our voters told us we're going to be at large? And what the judge is going to look over the dais to you over the bench, and he's going to say, hey, you're asking for an advisory opinion. Nobody sued you. I'm not going to give you an advisory opinion. That's just the way our courts are set up.
But if we're sued?
If we're sued, that comes up as a defense.
We were.
No, I know, I understand.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So if we're sued, this gentleman brings in an actual plaintiff who is a Wildomar resident, and we commence the lawsuit. We defend on the basis that the voters voted this way. That will likely be evidence in the case. And what the court will say is the polarization of that vote is simply part of the evidence. If the vote indicates that the city-wide, without regard to race, chose an at-large system, that's evidence on your side of the V. On the other hand, if the vote for at-large was a racially polarized vote, then it doesn't protect you at all, it damns you. So just the fact of the outcome of an election isn't going to protect you from this lawsuit.
Okay, well, I understand that, and we've had, California has voted things in the past. All of us in California have voted things in the past.
You just get
that
thrown out.
But the government has overrode what we have done. I understand that, okay. And then the next thing was, like Bridget said, the new law that they came up with as of January 1st only, they thought they were helping us. It only lets us do this by ordinance. Otherwise, we would have had to do all this through an election, which would have put it even farther out in order to get it done. And then we would have even had more time for this person to file a lawsuit. Hey, I hope the guy, whatever happens to this person, I don't really even care, I'm so mad. But the law, Kenny Mays, the law went in effect January 1st to help to protect the city from going through the nightmare of the filing the big, doing all the briefs and trying to fight a lawsuit. So they were supposedly helping us, but they're not helping anything at all because they've just made it, I mean, they've made that little piece of it better, but the overall law of the Voter Rights Act is just, it's crap. There's no way around it. But anyway, you answered my question, thank you very much. So now you know where all five of us pretty much sit because we're all mad. Okay, go ahead. No, I'm not the mayor, so you can keep talking all you want, but I'm done with my share. And yes, I don't want to pay a dime, and I don't like to do this, Mr. George. I hate it.
So you can tell we're all frustrated.
And I'm going to file a lawsuit against the state of California myself to get it over with.
So yes, we're all frustrated. This is 5 council members. We care for all the community. And I hope, and I know us 5 would still represent the whole 5. I am afraid down the line, if we start changing over, I hope doesn't go to my district this and my district that, but I know us 5 will still treat the city as a whole and not just the districts. You know, this was the beginning of the year. There are things we want to get done. Staff has a wish list. We're going to meet with our city manager, we're going to prioritize what we're going to do, and then this comes and it's like, we're just going to do districts all year. Because it takes so much incredible staff time and money to be able to get this done in time for everything. So that being said, we have to give direction. So I suggest we do put parks on the map, we do put commercial on the map. I do like that it's going to be interactive on the website, the maps. So what else? Direction. Of course, the things that we have to do, the population, everything by the law. Any other direction though, because that's what we need to tell him, so.
Well, and include the address of the 5 council members like we talked about that are duly elected.
Right.
You know, I don't know that I want to draw the districts to say, okay, every district should have a park. Is that what you mean, or just know?
No. We just said put on the map.
Right.
Commercial on the map, just so when it's on the website, you can.
Could we pull up the map for a second and look at it? And particularly probably the population density map. When you talk about various neighborhoods in our community, I think there's some, you know, a couple that really come to mind. One is the farm up in the upper right that you see the pink and yellow area up there. It's an area that continues to grow. There's new houses that we all were there at a ribbon cutting just 3 weeks ago. It's an area that's been around for a while, and it's a definite community of interest in my mind. It's a lot of people in that area, you know, they have their own HOA, they have their own little paper. Definitely an area that I would say shouldn't be split, for instance. When I look at the Windsong area, which is down right, sort of says Lake Elsinore Unified right in the middle of this map for some reason, but anyhow, that area is definitely another community that has a very strong identity. I've walked both those neighborhoods and met a lot of good people in both those neighborhoods, and just a lot to those 2 communities. Again, someone mentioned around Wildomar Elementary School, there's definitely a community-centric area right there. Again, you can sort of go by the population densities. Sedco, another area that definitely has an identity. We regularly see people that come in and, you know, they still get their mail as Lake Elsinore. We're still working on that. But it's an area that definitely has a separate name and identity would be an area that I think should all be included in one district. And there's some more. If you look down in the lower right, down by, on Clinton Keith, that whole area. Not really, you have more separated developments there, but it's definitely, they all blend together in some regards and have some community aspects. So I think it's for me, just you see these population sort of density centers that come together as communities. And it would be, I don't think would be in the right interest to split those or separate those. Or they should be, they're each in their own district rather, not split, besides themselves. As far as other things I think that should be on the map, I think we need to sort of see what you're gonna bring forward to us. I like the idea of sort of more of a public meeting. We all can walk around and maybe see 5 or 6 different maps on the walls and have some input and go from there. Those are my thoughts.
One comment just to add to that when the maps are, the online maps, they're actually overlaid on Bing Maps.
Okay.
So it's not quite Google, but it's essentially the same. So the underlying Bing map that shows kind of streets and hills and parks, and you can actually switch, depending on what you want to see, you can switch between a street map and a topographical map and a satellite map. So a lot of that underlying, hill, like the hills, they'll be clear on that kind of map too. So you'll get a lot of that basic stuff on every map.
Can I make one more comment? I'm sorry. One of the things, and going back to just the frustrational level on this, and I want to share this because I think it's important to our voters. When you're a voter that you're suddenly in a district, you only get to vote for that one district. I look at our city and I look across all the different aspects of our city and I think, gosh, even if I wasn't sitting as an elected, if I'm living in the farm, I might not want the voter in the other district, and to not have any input on that at all, I think is another poor idea in the way these districts work in smaller cities where, again, we have our 40,000 residents or 35,000 residents to say that, since you live in this area, you can't have any input at all in the other areas. It just, to me, is very frustrating. But I also, on a frustrational level, again, I like to get out and meet all the voters I can and walk and go door to door. And I look at where I'm at on the north side of town and think, gosh, there's really only 2-3 neighborhoods that are really sort of walkable. There's a lot of parts of the city that, God bless everybody that has a couple dogs and a large chain link fence and a sign that says no trespassing. I generally don't knock on that door. It's a little hard to get to the front door. It's even better when they have the no soliciting sign, even though you've gotten past the guard dog, and then you go, okay, I'll call you. But I enjoy that, and I just personally find it very frustrating that I'm not going to be walking and knocking on doors in Windsong and the farm and those areas that I have in the past. So, sorry, just had to get more frustration.
Well, and having to stay in that district for 4 years or 8 years or
Right.
whatever you're going to run. I'm in a huge house. I would really like to downsize.
Yeah.
You're brought on a bigger family. Maybe you'd like to move up.
The conversations happen, sure.
You're not going to be able to do any of that.
Any other direction, Bob?
Well, I think probably off of Grand Avenue, the areas with a lot more horses in them. If you're talking about a community of interest, and there's a second horse concentration down near the downtown area of Wildomar, going towards Lake Elsinore.
Tim or Marcia?
I have only one other thing. On Baxter, on the top of that mountain up there, that thing that might come in someday, that's a huge amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it hasn't been approved or anything, but if that ever came in, that's 1,200 homes. And, I mean, you have to take we probably should take that into consideration also when we do this, because that's going to be a big lot of people up there.
Well, when the population or the census gets updated, just redistricting is a regular thing we'd have to go to from this point on.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, we actually didn't cover that, but yes,
okay.
after each census, the council will revisit the lines and see if they're population balanced or not, and if not, update them. So so the map you adopt this year will be used for this year's election, 2018 and 2020, because the census is in 2020, but the data doesn't come out till 2021.
Right, okay.
So then,
Okay, sounds good. That's what
And I have a what-if attorney question. What if 2 years from now we decided as a council, or 5 years from now we wanted to be at large? Do we still have that ability to do it without an election like we do into districts?
No. No, the new law only allows you to go one way. If you wanted to go back,
Figures.
Go to the people.
if you wanted to go
Which
back,
might
you
be
would have
cheaper.
to go to the people.
But then they'd overturn it again.
Well, yeah, that goes back to if the California law were to change, or if we were to
Right.
get some sort of exception for small cities.
Yeah, we have to bring it to the people and get them voted back into the
want-
large.
Well, that's fine.
Wanted Tom actually, because I heard someone mention that we were sued, and we actually received a letter from Shakeman and Hughes threatening a lawsuit, and if we voluntarily went to districts within this time frame, that preempted the lawsuit. Am I correct, Tom? I just wanted you to speak on that, because I heard someone comment, but we were sued.
Right, we don't have a pending lawsuit currently. We have a letter that threatens one, but there is no pending lawsuit.
Right.
And he would have to have a person here that lives in Wildomar bring that suit forward.
Correct.
Right, and so Shakeman and Hughes does always in other cities. If you Google, there's plenty of information out there. He does always have a person that he sues on behalf of. So it's Shakeman, SHENKMAN, and Hughes out of the LA area.
And Debbie, is the letter on the website somewhere yet?
The letter is not on the website. Can we,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that needs to be
we
out.
will get that on the website?
So then are we going to, so bringing that up, are we going to have then a whole separate page for all this, the map, the information, how to submit comments, the letter?
Yeah, I think we'll, like we do with the parks,
Okay, we'll have a
a couple
whole,
years ago, we'll have a separate button, we'll work with the consultants to
okay.
set up that one easy accessible
Yeah,
area.
I think it was on before.
Yeah, it was.
I have one other thing I'd just like to point out. If we use Bundy Canyon for some reason for a boundary, we're realigning that road, and there's a new development coming in there as well. And so if we were to use that alignment, I guess again, it would come up in the next census change that we would just update it at that point. Is that how that would work? Or would it not matter technically right now?
The only thing that gets tricky, because we've run into this, is when we follow a line and then they realign the road
Right.
and the precinct goes right through the house.
Right.
So legally, I don't know the official way to handle it. The registrar figures it out. But that, we can run into that, so it's good to know and, you know.
Because right now, if you look at the alignment, I don't think anyone lives right on that part of the road right now. So if you were to use the new alignment, you would not have an issue because there's no one there. There's no registered voters in that area, might be my understanding. So you could use the new alignment and then not have the problem when the alignment came forward. But of course, that'll probably come forward in about the same time when the census is getting updated, in about 4 years, so.
Okay, yeah, if it's 3 or 4 years down the road, then it's not gonna factor in, but if it was something happening right now, yeah, we could get that and accommodate to the most, try to avoid those kinds of problems. But registrars are used to those things happening.
Okay.
Do we need to decide now on the 3 public meetings, how we want to handle them? Or is,
Yeah, I mean, you can discuss how to handle them. Also contained within the first resolution is a tentative timeline that schedules those 3 public hearings, which the proposal is that they will follow your regular city council meetings, in that the first public hearing will be at your February council meeting, the second public hearing in March, the third one in April. So if you'd like to discuss the format or change that timeline, that's up to you to do.
I would really like Mr. Johnson to hold them like he did before, where we can sit in with the public. He did a great job explaining and getting the lines. And that way they can move a little faster. They still have to be noticed, but they don't have to stick with our schedule.
so are you thinking, so before we
Does that
read
work
the
for
second
you?
and fourth, so are you thinking like we could actually do one February 10th and then do one the 4th, or the next, whatever the second Wednesday is in February, and then do one, have Mr. Johnson do one the 4th Wednesday, that would be 2 right there in February. Do they have to be held a certain days apart?
No, they don't have to be a certain days apart. Scheduling is tricky to find specific dates as we put forward, because, I don't know if you know, but there were, I call them the Grinch letters. I know of 8 letters that were sent December 16th to cities. I think there were many more than that, so there's a lot of this going on. So scheduling is a little tricky. But yes, we could reorganize it. I mean,
Are you happy with the schedule and?
it works for me, but I'm flexible if you have other desires. The other thing you could try is, I mean, I don't know if you've done this, but if you want a more informal thing, we might be able to do it before the formal council meeting starts or something like that. There's different ways.
Take like a workshop beforehand.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
What about all the people who work?
Well, it would be at 5:30.
How long long do they usually take?
They vary. Mr. Levitt just finished Anaheim, where they were going for a couple of hours. But you have 120 public speakers, a couple of those. So, something like that. So they can go, if you get a lot of, it all depends on how many people come out.
Oh, yeah.
Can I mention just one kind of legal technicality? For the February meeting, we had to publish notice in the newspaper, and that notice had to get in the newspaper, or at least sent to them this morning. So we had to make some assumptions.
That's fine.
And we noticed
I'm
your
fine.
February hearing for just the city council meeting at 6:30.
Okay.
So potentially what you could do is adopt this resolution with this timetable, then at the February city council meeting, after we have the first public hearing, you can kind of decide, all right, is this working? Do we need to modify that schedule? So the schedule isn't set in stone tonight, but you could say, all right, for the February meeting, we're gonna go with this schedule, and then maybe we can change it.
Okay.
And it really comes down to how much other stuff we have on the agenda for that night to see how long it would actually go.
Yeah.
So we could play it by ear each time. So I'm,
Well, not after this, it has to be,
The notice has to be out.
no, I understand that, but we'll know next meeting how long it, you know.
Yeah.
And we can look into what's coming up.
For March, is what you're saying. Okay, so.
I like it.
Is that enough direction? Anything else? Is that enough direction? Mr. Johnson, Marguerite? Is that enough?
Did you want them to act on the actual resolution then? I think.
We're going to adopt the resolution as stated.
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah,
then-
you have two separate resolutions. The first one sets the tentative timeline, the second one.
I'll make a motion on resolution 2016-09, again with the comments provided to staff, and with the only note that we do this under duress by financial means.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, all ayes.
Unless somebody wants to donate all the money.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody raising their hand.
Attorney
George?
there? Well, thank you very much. I thought it was a very informative meeting tonight. Thank you for coming out, and as you heard, the next meeting will be on February 10th? 10th, and it will be a public hearing.